There's been so much going on in the transfer portal over in Manhattan in terms of K-State men's basketball. It's been hard to keep up with all of it, but thankfully we've got an expert here in-house with us to do so, a very special guest, K-State analyst of GoPowercat, Ryan Gilbert. Ryan, thank you so much for joining us. Let's just go ahead and dive right in. It felt like things were a little quiet over in terms of the transfers, right, when the portal window first opened, but now only 3 guys with eligibility left on this roster from last year.
Yeah, Caroline, thank you for having me on. It's been a while. I'm glad to be back on here with you. But yeah, it's obviously been kind of a roller coaster after Jerome Tang said that he wanted roster continuity. He wanted to bring guys back from last season. And like you said, only 3 guys returning. That's obviously David Castillo, Moby Ike Garuka, and Taj Manning. And one by one, you just kept seeing departure after departure. And it was surprising at first, but after a couple of those, we kind of got used to it and learned to maybe accept that it's going to be another year of newcomers, of new faces in Manhattan. Obviously, Tang, kind of wanted to keep as many players as he could. That's not the case, and now they're going to have to turn in different directions.
Yeah, well, you said the word surprising, which my first thought when I heard surprising was Doug McDaniel, because that's how I felt when I saw Doug's name went in, right? I felt like that was a guy that kind of towards the end of the season, started getting to the point where he needed to be development-wise. What do you see there? Did that one shock you as much as I feel like it shocked a bunch of other people?
Yeah, Doug in Kansas City after the loss in the Big 12 tournament was outspoken about returning, wanting to come back. And obviously at some point that changed, but he was a number. He was one of many players that had expressed interest in coming back, and obviously that has not been the case. But Doug McDaniel and Jerome Tang, they never shied away from maybe their relationship being a little rocky at the beginning of last season, and as things progressed, Doug got into the starting 5, and it seemed like things were clicking. But obviously, with this world in college basketball, you never know what's for certain.
Yeah, I've enjoyed seeing some of your tweets saying how much percentage-wise K-State's lost in terms of its scoring, right? Just kind of putting that in perspective for people to really understand how much this team lost. I know I'm throwing kind of a wild question at you here, but off the top of your head, what is that number? How much scoring did K-State lose? How much of an impact on this team are these losses to the portal?
Yeah, I think it was 92%, Caroline. I mean, you have to fact check me on that, but yeah, I mean, that's insane. And obviously it's frustrating when like I mentioned with Jerome Tang's words about wanting to keep players. That's a lot of obviously scoring minutes, rebounding, defense, everything has to be replaced. It's not just putting the ball through the net.
Right. A lot of exits, also a couple entries, though. What do you know about the couple of transfers that Tang has brought in and that are going to come to Manhattan next season?
Yeah, Abdi Bashir out of Monmouth is obviously a lethal scorer, 20 points a game. And you look at his game, there's maybe some more areas that need work if he wants to have success in the Big 12. But scoring is absolutely his strong suit. He can put the ball through the net with ease. And then Kamari McGriff out of UNC Wilmington, an NCAA tournament guy from last season. That's a winner that you add to your roster. Maybe not a difference maker, but a guy that has that winning DNA. It's easy to probably get excited about that one. And then Nate Johnson, the MAC Player of the Year from Akron. You look at his stats and they're maybe not crazy, but he was, like I said, the Player of the Year and the Defensive Player of the Year in that conference. And he was also on an NCAA tournament team. So he's another winner, a guy that is very well respected around that league, and obviously making this jump here to Kansas State in the Big 12. Probably won't be easy, but in my opinion here, I think Nate Johnson's probably the number one ad so far out of the portal.
Yeah, you mentioned winners. I want to kind of focus on that for a second. How important is that when the continuity piece from last season to this season isn't necessarily there to bring in guys that have been to the NCAA tournament, that have won, that have had success, just in terms of transferring that over and maybe gelling some of that together? How big of a deal really do you think that is?
Yeah, it's a big deal. Jerome Tang's first season was full of players who had won previously. And you go back to last season, I think there were a number of issues with that team. But Doug McDaniel, CJ Jones, Max Jones, Byfall, all 4 of those guys came from sub 500 programs to Kansas State. And obviously there were, like I said, a lot of things that maybe went wrong for Jerome Tang last year. But it's hard to start winning with a bunch of newcomers. It's hard to period, it's hard to win. But when you're, bluntly put, not used to winning, when you've lost more games than you've won, it becomes that much steeper of a challenge with a group of new faces.
Right. Well, Ryan, thank you. We appreciate your insight as always and appreciate the time. Great to get you back on the show. We've got to go for timing purposes, but we're also looking forward to who else the Cats add. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. Yep. Thank you.